Hi Loaners! Welcome back to our channel. I'm Brandy Romero.
And I'm Carly Ventura.
And we are the Loaner.Ladies. Welcome back to Mondays with Matt, where we are talking all about appraisals. For those of you who haven't seen our last few episodes, Matt is one of our great friends. He's also a local appraiser here in the state of Utah. This week we're going to be wrapping up Mondays with Matt, and we'll be back to our normal and regular scheduled programming next Thursday. Today we are doing a Q&A segment and answering some of our viewers' questions. So with that, let's get right into it.
Let's do it. We had a couple of people tune in and say that they had a few questions for you, Matt. So
They're intrigued.
But first, we do want to say that we loved having you on the show, and we hope that you've had some fun with us too.
I've enjoyed it. It's been a lot of fun.
Good. So we're super excited to answer some of these questions. And our first question comes from our fellow loaner, Eric Copa.
Hi, Eric.
Thanks so much for writing in. Eric's question is, what method do you use to value a property when sales comps are not a good indicator?
Eric, that's a great question. In appraisals, we have three basic approaches to value. The sales comparison approach, which is what you're asking about, the income approach, and the cost approach. However, for lending purposes, the only value that they're going to accept is one that's based off the sales comparison approach, which is going to be typical of buyer reaction. But I don't think that answers your question. I think your question is more in terms of when it's a tough property and there's not a lot of comparables, or there's not real good comparables. And really, research at the end of the day is going to be your best friend in learning and thinking outside of the box. And I'll give you an example. Let's say that you got to value a condo and there are no sales in that condo project. However, there are sales that are similar in size and room count outside of that project, but there's none inside. So what I would do in that case is I would go look historically at the condo, at the project that I'm looking at, and then I would compare that to those other projects for their historical sales and try to determine the differences, which will help you determine the differences currently.
Yeah. Love
Great.
that.
Thank you so much, Matt, and thank you, Eric, for your question.
Hope that answers that for you.
Our last question comes from fellow loaner David Dower. Hey, David. Thanks so much for your question. His question is, why are CMAs not reliable? But also, Matt, why don't you address what a CMA actually is before you answer that question?
So CMA, comparative market analysis, it's a form really that is used on MLS, and you put comparables. It's very similar to a sales grid in an appraisal. But CMAs can be very reliable depending on who's doing it or how they're doing it. If they're unbiased in there, where they don't have a goal in mind, just what is the property worth. Part of the problems I see with CMAs are they don't account for things like condition and for market, for time. So like in our market, or how our market has been, a dated sale is typically going to need to come up. You're going to need an adjustment for time because our market has been on an increase over the last couple of years. So when you account for those things and you account for condition, the other thing is a CMA is going to give you an average, and an average can be skewed easily by throwing in one comparable that is, far superior or maybe is inferior. So if you don't work off that average, you work off what the best comparable or the best two comparables are and where they're at on adjusted sales price, you should be pretty reliable.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Matt.
We really appreciate you
Thanks, David.
answering our loaners' questions.
Yeah, thank you, David, for that question.
That was a great question, too.
Yeah. That's going to be a wrap on this week's episode and also Mondays with Matt. We're so sad to see you leave, but thank you so much for being on our show. We just super appreciate your time, so thank you so much for being here.
It's been my pleasure.
If you're ever looking to get an appraisal done on your home, please contact Matt Prim with Prim Real Estate Appraisals. We will leave his contact information in the description of this video, so feel free to contact him if you need an appraisal.